Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good thinking 46. Back after a week off ish.
Yeah, I mean, a week in Mexico, with no internet sounds well deserved, like the right way to be spending time. But anyway, welcome to another episode of our culture trends, and we need a proper intro to this thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
We'll find time to do that in the coming weeks.
yeah.
Yes.
But anyway, let's dive into the letter. Tell me what
Okay.
we're talking about this week.
Cool. Yes. So I want to jump around to a bunch of different things. I feel like everybody's still talking about Jaguar and things like that, but I really want to dig in. There's some like fresh things that made me smile and made me really happy. And so I want to dig into some of those. And I think one of the biggest things was like, it started for me, your mention of the Apple ad. And then there were kind of other campaigns around that. And I just felt, and maybe I don't know if this is me personally, right? Or kind of just what's happening or kind of something that's bigger. But I do feel like ads are leading, and even the Volvo one that you referenced a couple of weeks ago, ads are leading with a bit more emotion now. And I feel like, is that because we've come past COVID? We're now, the elections are over and now we're able to do that. But there feels like there's something that's happening where ads are really targeting to the emotion. And for me, like, it's totally working.
Yeah, I mean, I think around the holidays, it's always that way, right? Like, I think people are always more emotional around the holidays. The ads are always more emotional. So I don't know if it's also just the time of year, like even I think it's more what I think is interesting and what's happening for me is that I think that what's happening is yes, it's more emotional, but it's more storytelling. We're more looking at where people are in culture, what people are really doing. Like to me, that's what was so great about the Volvo ad, right? Is it's showing this really real thing of a more involved male parent, which is like a reality that a lot of people are experiencing and are themselves these days, and that's showing up. I think in the Apple ad, it's showing the real sort of the story of like how amazing technology is turning into be, right? Like there's this very detached thing that we've had for a long time with phones, and you feel really disconnected from them and you're kind of bashing them all the time as like these things that are ruining your life. But when you actually think about what technology is really affording us most of the time, I think it's quite powerful, right? Like we often have these stories, like I can't remember who it was, if it was Google or Apple, which is very funny and telling, who've done an ad in the past about like, at the holidays, one thing that's really amazing is being able to be doing what we're doing now, right? Speaking on a even 20 years ago, you would live on the other side of the world and I would be completely disconnected from you. Now I'm going to be apart from my family for Christmas, but I know that my daughter thinks that basically she's like got her grandparents in the living room half the day, And that's amazing. But I think there is more appetite for storytelling, and there's more, I would say, cinematic like appetite. Like that's what was going on in the John Lewis ad, where there was all of this cool, like, really like a movie style app. And again, even the Apple one, I think, feels more like a movie. These flashbacks and like everything going on, and then the retelling of the story that feels very cinematic. And I think that is for sure a trend that has been growing for almost the whole year.
Yeah. And I think John Lewis always hits it.
Yeah, but more this year.
Yeah. And I think to pull out kind of your insight, which I think is exactly it. I think it's about, well, I think there's the appetite for it, right? I don't think in past years, like with other things going on, COVID, we were as emotionally ready. Like I think our nervous systems needed to be like re-regulated, right? I don't think we were as ready for like heavy emotion. And I think we finally are ready for that. I think especially given election and all of the things, we're kind of looking for that and in need of that. I do think storytelling is for sure, I think, part of that and happening. And I absolutely agree with you with kind of the cinematographic kind of, there's just kind of that more elevated lens to things. I think we've looked at and done some work like that for years, and trying to really find something that's relevant on social media and that speaks to that lens, but also has this higher level of artistry. Wow.
Yeah.
Can I get that
it's
out?
Early where you are.
It is a balance for sure. But I also think the insight to which these brands are figuring out how to do the storytelling and what to frame it around and what to position around is really great, right? So I think Volvo is a perfect example. It's not, let's just make a sweet campaign about, about why our cars are, the safest. It's really about like, what's that going to trigger and who are we going after and what is that insight to really do that? And I think they really hit that. And I think we're seeing that more and more.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. I mean, I think, like you were saying after COVID, it was a lot of like societal things, right? Like that was the storytelling we were saying, like we as a people need to come together and like da 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 da. And I think we're in a much more like in our own bodies, in our own minds type of mindset at the moment, like and you're seeing that. So for sure, agreed with that. And then I think, the Caperni ad for me, like it was so cool. And for that one, for me, again, it was the cinematography, right? Like the shooting at the feet and the dogs, and like it was very made for the internet, right? Obviously, dogs. Like Caperni could have done something and has been doing like kind of wild, very like almost sci-fi kind of ads and campaigns for the whole year, and they could have totally gone with something like that, right? Like very out of this world. I don't know, create a Santa bag out of clay or whatever, like it would be something different, but they didn't do that, and they went with something that just really worked, and it was cool cinematography. It felt really relevant. It felt like it was great for the internet, and it was just like not trying to overdo it. And I also like that too. Like I was there for that. And totally. Ralph's like II windows where you get to wave at a bear, also there for that. Just having fun and not taking it too seriously, I think is the other side that I'm resonating with personally.
Yeah, like, but doing it in a very elevated artistic way, which, more and more, please.
Yeah, I will share in the next newsletter, or maybe I'll share it in the show notes here. I saw a campaign by JD Sports, which I don't know if you're not based in Europe, JD Sports is probably not as big for you, but JD Sports is the probably biggest sneaker retailer in Europe. And they have a holiday campaign that is getting a lot of positive and negative buzz, and it's interesting. So it depicts like what I would say a modern reality of parenting. It's a very different modern reality of parenting than, say, Volvo. And it's, it's parents who are maybe like not, if we would say trad wives and trad families over here is like the traditional, like, 2.5 kids and like, dad wears a suit and tie. Like this is over here where it's like, hey, maybe, it's a 22-year-old man who's had a baby, who's out with his friends, like having a beer, but he's also got a kid, and like that's fine too. And people, it was interesting reading the comments on it, and I will share it in the show notes, but so on most of them, people are like, this is what I want to see. Like this is the reality of a lot of people that never gets shown. These families like are perhaps even more of the majority of families, and maybe the majority of JD Sports is like more audience. I'm not sure that's true, but that was in the comments. But then it was interesting reading the flip side of the comments, which was like, hey, are you taking this, societal failure and making it into your Christmas campaign? And people were upset about that. And I saw similar things about apples where it was like, hey, you're taking a disability and you're kind of turning it into an ad, and like he would really have a hearing aid, and like he's not really using Apple as this hearing aid, and like, like everybody has something negative to say about these types of things. Yeah. But I think
haters gonna hate.
Like, yeah, haters are gonna hate. So, but I think overall what is resonating, and I think what the majority of people resonate with in the JD Sports one, is that these are true stories, real stories of real people's lives. And you can do it in a cool brand relevant way. Like you don't always have to do it in the Volvo way, right? Which is more like what I would think of as a more traditional ad kind of and traditional format. But like you can take these insights and do fun things with them. And like I think that the JD Sports one feels very on brand for them, but still has the, the real stories. And I think that was interesting.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating, and I would love to see that. And it feels like kind of what we saw with Burger King, right? Which I'm 100% here for, of like, these are real things that are happening. If people disapprove of them or don't like them or whatever, that's fine. But these are real things that are happening in real people's lives. So to express those and have a different perspective that is beyond just the traditional, like, I am so here for.
Yeah,
as you know.
completely agree.
All right, middle mid, I just kind of want to mention it.
All right, let's talk about it.
I mean, it feels like, so do we feel like things, because again, I realize that I, in my living in my Venice bubble, have a little bit of a skewed, Erewhon perspective on things, but do we feel like, obviously things are getting more elevated? I'm super curious, and this is a completely different conversation, but like, as Whole Foods is crumbling, right, what we used to know of it, and then there's Erewhon, is there opportunity for another brand, another big brand at that level? But so are we saying things are either going kind of Erewhon caliber or, super kind of low and nothing in between, or is it purely all going high?
No, it's definitely both. And I'm not even sure that in my view of it, like Erewhon may be in like a super luxe like category of this conversation. I think what the article was talking about is it was saying like, hey, like if you're gonna if I'm on the, let's use the mac and cheese aisle as the example, right? I'm in the mac and cheese aisle. I don't even eat mac and cheese, but I've been thinking about it a lot this week in terms of this. What the low end is that people are buying private label, right? Like good looking, like that they feel good about, but affordable private label. And so private label is having a very big year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think if it's really well done, people are choosing it happily.
Yeah.
And are going towards it. And I think, that's happening. And then I think what the other side of it is like in the mac and cheese aisle is Goodles, right? So there's Goodles, which is like a high protein. It has some organic SKUs, not all organic SKUs, mac and cheese, right? And if you're thinking to yourself like, hey, I can either spend $2 and get the private label. These prices are probably way off, but I could spend $2 getting private label. I could spend $4 or $5 getting Kraft mac and cheese. Or I can spend $9 getting Goodles, but I feel good about Goodles. I feel good about the ingredients it's giving me. I feel good about the brand it's giving me. Like, I feel good about the halo of that brand. Like, I see it alongside other cool brands, but I feel like the ingredients are good. I'm willing to pay $9. And if it's not $9 and I feel good about it, then I'd rather have $2 mac and cheese that looks good, but that I feel like probably isn't all that different from this middle player here.
Totally.
Which is the cat.
Totally.
Is Kraft.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that that's kind of more what I'm saying, is that I think that there's this kind of middle ground that a lot of mass market brands have fallen into, where private label is kind of growing. Bougie or like higher value, higher quality products are more prevalent and easily available. Like, look at Walmart and what they've been doing.
Yeah, and killing it.
And then there's this middle ground, and you're looking at yourself and you're thinking to yourself, well, if I'm going here and I'm spending $6, then maybe I'll just push to $9 and feel good about it. Or if not, I'm just gonna go with my $2 box. And I think that obviously in grocery is one category, but I do think it's also happening in beauty and, like you have Sol de Janeiro selling $45 body butter, right? And then you have, and then you have the dupes of that are going for like $1, $2, $3, $4. And then you've got everyone in between, and that's not working for people.
Right. Yeah. I think that makes total sense. And I think that's true. We're not going to have you on The Price is Right. So that's going to be a no-go career path for you. But I think really, and this has been a conversation we've been having for a minute, is about private label brands. Like, such a fucking opportunity. It used to be generic, but such an opportunity for those brands to really lean into the branding, the packaging, all of the parts and pieces, because those can really have a big moment. They put it there.
Yeah, and I think that they can win basically in the majority of categories right now. And I think actually in the protein category, you might not even want to be competing with the Goodles, but you should be competing for the chicken for sure. Like, because people are, like, like the organic chicken from the supermarket versus this expensive organic chicken, like people will go for the organic chicken from the
totally.
supermarket, you know? And so I think like you can win that race.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Okay. All right. Next thing, and I've taken them from two different buckets, but talking about modern slim fast and then Botox.
Okay.
Because to me,
You know,
because those
your-
are, you know,
Yeah.
GLP-1, right? GLP-1 and Botox, to me, those are things that we used to see as like going to a professional with a lab coat on and doing the things. And you still have to go to a professional with a lab coat on, I guess. I should clarify that. But it does feel like kind of what you've been talking about with Botox, that it's more of a beauty regime versus like a proper procedure.
Yeah.
And I'd say they're both that.
But yeah, I would agree with that. I think that people are viewing, even though GLP-1s are, you know, a pharmaceutical for sure, they are not really being categorized in the culture that way. They're being seen as like the equivalent of a supplement at this point, right? Like it's something that you're like, yeah, I'm taking GLP-1s, like, yeah, I'm taking magnesium, yeah, like, you know, I take melatonin, whatever. Like it's
totally
that same feeling, and that similar thing is happening with Botox. And, you know, slightly not with filler, but like with Botox, people are saying, okay, they're not viewing it as like, this is, you know, like borderline what I think people used to think of, which is like you're about to go under the knife. Like, oh, someone who has Botox is like 4 steps away from, you know, becoming the cat lady. And then 100%. Now it's like, okay, it's the same as like going to get your eyelashes done. You know, it's like, okay, like it's augmenting.
Totally. But I think they're both in that category. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's an interesting cultural shift that I think is interesting to watch. And I think it's happening more and more. And it's interesting to sort of see how that will play out in a bigger way in next year. I do think healthcare, the rebranding of healthcare is going in this direction for me.
Yep.
Like,
yeah,
it's all getting kind of unmedicalized, technicalized. These are great words I'm creating, and going into more lifestyle. Like, and I think that's happening across the board.
Exactly. Yep. Okay. Prime viewing. Can you like start with the basics and let's go through this?
Tell you what Boy Room is? Yeah. I mean, so basically, you've heard of Boy Room because you read the letter and I've talked about it before, but to just pretend like you don't know, even though you should know.
I'm always here to not know, so great.
Yeah. So Boy Room is I think it came out of, you know, there's a production company that's called Gymnasium. They make TikTok shows, and this is one of their ones that has gone really, really big. And it's a show entirely, you know, happening on TikTok. This girl goes to boys' rooms and just witnesses kind of for all of us and takes us through the thing that we all know is really happening. And as a person who's female, you've probably experienced at some point where you just go in and you're like, why is there a bike rack in the middle of your kitchen? You know, like it's all of those people, you know, like it's like, oh, like you open the stove and there's like, you know, magazines in there. You open the cabinets and he has like, you know, only one kind of beer just in like a no dishes type of thing. So it's just episode upon episode upon episode of that. It's very entertaining, relatable, and horrifying at the same time. Right. And so season 2 is coming back and Amazon is going to sponsor it. And it's essentially going to be like the makeover edition of these horrific spaces. So you're going to come in and you're going to be like, they're going to buy Amazon products. So, you know, like the Extreme Home Makeover show. Smart. Or like, you know, what was the one that was really amazing with the 5 gay men coming in?
Queer Eye?
Queer Eye.
Yeah.
Like a Queer Eye episode where they're going to come in and they're going to redo and revamp the Boy Room to like make it better. Girls, guys, everyone watching this show sees this, goes on Amazon, buys said things. It's like, it's so simple that it's genius to me.
Totally. It
and
is.
they could have totally gone and like, much to the internet's chagrin, they could have totally gone and made an Amazon Prime show out of this, right? Or they could even have hired them and took it off TikTok and made an Amazon Prime show. But no, they're just sponsoring this show as it is. And that's why I love it, because I think, it's like product placement, but it's modern product placement. It's amazing.
Totally. No, I think that's interesting. Thanks for the detailed explanation, even though, of course, I was already in the know. I think something's happening at Amazon. I think it's interesting, and I'm not always a fan of kind of or think about it as innovation or something new. Like within the shows and the movies that they have going on, like there's somebody or a team or people that are kind of starting to push and think and do things in kind of out of the box, unusual ways for Amazon that I think is really fascinating. And I'm curious to see where it goes.
Yeah, I just think, obviously everyone and their mother is interested in having a TV show now. So, like, it is interesting to see how different brands are kind of coming at that, right? Like, I wrote about how Toys R Us is essentially making a game show, and that's one way of doing it. But Boy Room has the existing audience, which to me is always an easier way to go about doing something like this, is to put your brand where the audience already is, versus like saying like Toys R Us and saying, hey, like come and watch this Toys R Us show. Like it could be amazing, could take off, could be great, but you don't know. And this we know is great. And then you're creating a cool like version of this, which is awesome.
Totally. Go where the conversation's already happening. But I mean, even in like the movies that they have on there, the different channels that they have, like they have a whole spiritual channel. I think it's interesting, and kind of as they're, of course, competing with Netflix and everybody else, but really trying to like really create their own path and their own space in that. I think they're doing some different things that I wouldn't have typically thought.
Tell me more about the spiritual channel. I haven't seen this.
Oh, they have a whole spiritual channel called Gaia. They have like a Ram Dass documentary. They have, all the things. Oh yeah. Supernatural. They have a bunch of, yeah.
Wow. Okay. I'll add a link to it.
So they did that. They had the movie, what is it? My Old Ass.
No, it sounds amazing. Sounds like something you would 100% have me watch. So.
No, it's good. It's the girl. It's a well-known iconic actress who I'm totally spacing on the name. But anyways, the younger version of her takes mushrooms with her friends, and then she appears, and then she kind of helps to guide her. It's like, amazing. It's in the,
Yeah, neither of us would be good on a game show about names, by the way. Like, that's not in our feature either. If we're just crossing off different game shows that we can't be on, that would be it.
Yes, 100%. Let's talk about Eileen Fisher.
Yes.
I personally am a fan of Eileen Fisher. I don't know if you remember, but even the first B Corp retreat. So Eileen Fisher's a B Corp, and I think she's been a B Corp since inception. So she sponsored one of the first women B Corp retreat, the one that I went to on the East Coast, wherever that was. And I think as a brand, like I think she's quite iconic. She's almost like, to me, Patagonia. Like she had a whole, it wasn't called Revive, but it was some type of a recycle movement that she had, 30 years ago, where she was kind of using dead stock and kind of old fabric and things and remaking things. So I think as a brand, I think there's a lot there that I just personally appreciate. As a customer, is that, no, I know you do. But as a customer, like I'm just putting that out there. Like it's forever felt like Ann Taylor. Like it's nothing that I personally would be stoked on. So I'm super curious to see kind of where they're going.
Well, Casey Lewis mentioned something in her newsletter. I'll link to it again in the notes. But she was talking about how Eileen Fisher is trying to go after Gen Z. And as soon as I read that, I was like, this is insanity. Like, it just feels like insanity. And it's not because I think Eileen shouldn't go after a younger audience or whatever, but I think the better play is to get a wider swath of, like, me to your mom, that is a customer who has the financial capabilities of buying that product, who has a history. There's a lot of talk about Gen Z buying sustainably and and then you look at them and they're actually buying everything on Temu. So like, it's
right. Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily put my eggs in like their there is that intention, but then the money isn't necessarily following those values. Whereas in older demographics, I think they do follow those more closely anyway. And so I just think that like I would just spend more time trying to make the brand relevant and relevant to this older group who I think right now, like you're neither relevant to the wider swath that you could be attracting who does have the money to buy your product, and then you're not relevant to this group either who doesn't have the money to buy your product. Like I just think that's a much harder get these people as the third tier of like your halo, right? Like if it's like I would say I would put probably like it's never going to be you, but like let's put your cohort, like your I definitely know friends of yours who fit into her sweet spot. Then then you have your mom, who I think is also that like outer halo. And then we have like the slightly younger group who are driven by the values, right? But like if you were making the clothes relevant, but more importantly, the styling relevant, the website feeling relevant, like I just think there's a lot more that could be done. And I think the brand has great bones, and I know that they're not big on advertising, and I get all of that. But I think that there are some things that they could do fundamentally as a brand that would just be make much more sense to me.
Yep. I think those are all right. All right, Eileen, let's chat. Can we talk about Helsinki? Because I'm going to go book my ticket.
I mean, this, I will say, like, before I posted about it, this had been making the rounds on LinkedIn for, like, maybe 2 weeks. So I was like, oh, do I still post about it? Is it still relevant enough? And then I was like, you know what? There's definitely a bunch of people who don't spend as much time on LinkedIn as I do. But yeah, I mean, it was an amazing out-of-home ad that was like, you know, no one is this crazy except you. And like, yes. I loved it because it's super shareable. Somebody sees that and they did do that, then they feel amazing about it and they want to share that with everybody. And then all the locals are also like, fuck yes. So it's just a really like nice way of kind of taking something that you could perceive as a negative, right? It being cold and dark as shit. And then I'm really
not great things.
I'm swearing a lot today, so you know if that offends you, I'm sorry. But yeah, you take a negative, you turn it on its head, it becomes a positive, it becomes something that people feel like they can kind of rally around, and it became really shareable, right? So I love that. It's always nice.
Yeah, really well done. A couple of fun things to dig into.
A small child.
Okay. Yeah, can you take us through a couple of fun things while I...
Yeah, no, or we just call it a day. Let's call it a day.
All right. Call it a day with Helsinki.
Yeah. Sick children take precedent over the end of this podcast. So.
They do. All right. This was great.
Bye.
Thank you. I'm going to go rescue a 13-year-old.
Yeah, not really a small child, but in my head, he's forever 3 years old. So there we go.
When they're sick, yeah, they're not great. All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye.